Loneliness is one of the most discussed psychological issues of our time. Researchers are mapping how deeply it can shape minds, bodies, and behavior. Once treated as a fleeting feeling, loneliness is now understood as a powerful state linked to mental health problems, physical illness, and changes in how we see ourselves and others. Recent studies indicate that loneliness not only affects how we feel in the moment, it can leave lasting traces on personality, physiology, and even the way the brain processes the social world. Taken together, this growing body of work suggests loneliness is not simply the absence of company. It is a complex experience that tends to reshape people from the inside out. Here are 11 recent studies that provide evidence for how loneliness touches human life, from personality development to nightmares, social media use, and the way we interpret fictional characters. Study 1. Loneliness and personality change over time. A large study of older adults suggests that loneliness can gradually shift core aspects of personality. Published in Personality and Individual Differences, it analyzed data from nearly 10,000 participants in the Health and Retirement Study over 8 years. Persistent loneliness predicted declines in extroversion, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, traits tied to sociability, kindness, and self-discipline. At the same time, higher neuroticism, tendency toward negative emotion, predicted greater future loneliness, pointing to a self-reinforcing cycle. The authors also examined negative affect, such as sadness or anger. These feelings both predicted and were predicted by loneliness. Importantly, the personality effects held even after accounting for negative affect, suggesting loneliness has unique links to trait change. Lead author Mohsen Joshanlu noted that personality appears more malleable than once assumed, indicating that reducing loneliness may support healthier personality development. Study 2. Lonely individuals show greater mood instability. Published in Cognition and Emotion, this study tracked 252 adults for 2 weeks, using smartphone prompts to capture emotions several times a day. People reporting higher loneliness showed more volatile moods, especially for positive emotions. Even when good things happened, the boost tended to fade more quickly. This pattern persisted after accounting for depression, demographics, and objective social isolation. Lead author Ji-Un Kang suggested that helping lonely individuals sustain positive feelings, not just creating them, may be important for long-term well-being. Study 3. Loneliness and feeling like a burden. A psychophysiology study indicates that loneliness shapes self-perception within relationships. Using data from more than 800 participants in the Midlife Development in the United States project, the researchers found that loneliness predicted stronger beliefs that one offers less support and creates more strain, particularly in family settings. They also tested whether heart rate variability, a marker of flexible emotion regulation, buffers this pattern. People with higher resting heart rate variability were less likely to view themselves as burdensome in family relationships, even when lonely. This suggests that the body's stress regulation systems may help protect against harsh self-judgments. Study 4. Social media use may feed a loneliness cycle. A large 9-year study from the Netherlands, published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, followed nearly 7,000 adults. Both passive use, scrolling, and active use, posting and commenting, predicted increases in loneliness over time. The feedback loop ran both ways. Loneliness also predicted greater later social media use. Lead author James A. Roberts argued that online interaction may be a poor substitute for face-to-face connection. The pattern suggests that time on platforms can displace more nourishing social contact, reinforcing disconnection. Study 5. Biological signatures. Proteins linked to loneliness. Research in Nature. Human behavior examined nearly 3,000 plasma proteins in more than 42,000 participants from the UK Biobank. Loneliness and social isolation were associated with specific protein patterns related to inflammation, immune function, and brain health. 5 proteins expressed in the brain showed positive associations with loneliness. Several proteins were also tied to conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and stroke. The findings indicate plausible biological pathways through which chronic loneliness could contribute to poorer health outcomes. Study 6: Rising Loneliness Among Young Adults Across Decades. A psychological bulletin meta-analysis pooled data from 345 studies and more than 124,000 emerging adults ages 18 to 29. From 1976 to 2019, loneliness tended to increase in this group. Since 2012, levels have appeared relatively stable despite widespread smartphone and social media use, suggesting the longer-term rise predates the modern digital era. Lead author Suzanne Buecher reported similar trends for students and non-students across countries. The analysis does not pinpoint causes, but it provides evidence that loneliness is a persistent concern for younger cohorts. Study 7: Loneliness and Nightmares. In the Journal of Psychology, 2 studies with more than 1,600 US adults found that loneliness predicted both more frequent and more intense nightmares. The link seemed to run through hyperarousal, chronic alertness, and rumination, repetitive negative thinking, both of which tend to be elevated in lonely individuals. This pattern fits with an evolutionary view. When people feel socially unprotected, they may become more sensitive to threat. That heightened sensitivity appears to extend into sleep, potentially disturbing rest and amplifying stress. Study 8: Loneliness, Thought Patterns, and Language. 2 studies in communication psychology suggest that lonely individuals may think and speak about the social world in more idiosyncratic ways. Using neuroimaging, researchers examined how participants represented well-known celebrities in the brain. In lonelier individuals, patterns in the medial prefrontal cortex, a region involved in social cognition, diverged more from the group. A second study looked at language. When describing celebrities, lonelier participants used words that were more semantically distant from their peers' descriptions and were more likely to feel that others did not share their views. The results indicate that loneliness is linked to social representations that differ from common reference points. Study 9: Blurred Boundary Between Real and Fictional Others. A cerebral cortex study recruited fans of Game of Thrones. For most participants, the brain clearly distinguished real-life friends from fictional characters. In lonelier individuals, responses in the medial prefrontal cortex were more similar for both groups. This effect held even after accounting for how much participants liked or identified with the characters. The pattern suggests that parasocial relationships, one-sided bonds with fictional people, may occupy cognitive space similar to real relationships when loneliness is high. Study 10: Lonely Teens and Later Mental Health. Published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, this longitudinal study followed more than 11,000 US adolescents from the mid-1990s into adulthood. Teens who often felt lonely at age 15 were nearly twice as likely to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder later, and were more likely to develop depression and stress-related conditions. The links to physical health markers such as diabetes or heart disease were weaker. The strongest patterns appeared in emotional and social areas, lower life satisfaction and less stable romantic relationships, suggesting that adolescent loneliness may leave a psychological imprint during a sensitive developmental window. Study 11: Idiosyncratic Brain Responses to Social Information. In psychological science, college students watched a socially rich video while undergoing functional MRI scans. Lonely participants showed less synchronized brain activity with others, especially in regions involved in social understanding, including the medial prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and superior temporal sulcus. They also showed stronger activation in areas associated with negative emotion, such as the insula and amygdala. This pattern indicates greater sensitivity to social threat and a tendency to process social scenes in atypical ways. Such divergence may make shared understanding harder, even when people are not physically alone. Across these 11 studies, the pattern points in a consistent direction. Loneliness tends to be more than a temporary feeling. It is associated with shifts in personality, daily mood dynamics, self-evaluation, and the biology of stress and disease. It appears in how people use technology, how they dream, and how their brains represent friends and fictional characters. The evidence indicates that building and maintaining meaningful relationships and supporting emotion regulation skills may help interrupt cycles that keep loneliness in place. As research expands, the field is mapping where the social, psychological, and biological pieces connect. That map is already helping to guide prevention and intervention strategies, and it may continue to evolve as new evidence accumulates.